Hey guys, it's EsoPa, and this video will be focused on approaching grand challenges. This is, I think, a video that some people have been asking for. Grand challenges are, if we go through the basics of it, I just want to talk about it really quickly. So, grand challenges are a mode in the game that where you can pay into it with 100 gems equivalent to $1, and the prizes go from 1 win up to 12 wins, with the highest win paying out 22,000 gold, with 1,100 cards, about 100 epics, and about 11. No, sorry, not epics. 100 rares, 110 rares, and about 11 epics, something around that uh, ballpark. And the bottom line is that grand challenges are the best way to spend your gems if you're able to make a positive on it. I think around maybe 5+ wins. I believe that's when you start getting positive. The higher you go, it gets exponentially better. Um, I believe only a very small percentage of the pool of players that do play grand challenges reach 12, maybe like point 0.6 something. I saw this stat from OJ. I'm can't remember off the top of my head, but in the end, like, grand challenges are the best way to max out your account, are the best way to gain cards for your account. Uh, that surpass things like gemming. Gemming almost always gives you a negative return on your value, or gemming through card cycles, which is a little bit better on it, but still negative trade for you. Uh, but this is like heavily reliant on skill. This is also heavily reliant on um, being able to play this mode correctly. I think there's a lot that goes into this mode, and I'm here to try to help you guys be prepared for it when it does come. So the one thing I want to talk about first is, yes, this costs us money to get into. Supercell is a company, and the way that they set up their models, everything costs money. That is worthwhile. This is worthwhile, so it costs money. If you were not able to do this, like pay gems in order to get into these challenges, then you're probably just gonna have to play ladder like normal, get chests like normal, and do it that way. For those of you who can pay it, great for you. Those who can't, I'm sorry. Uh, Classic challenges are not really a replacement for this mode because it gives you almost nothing close to the amount of value you would get normally. Another thing I just want to talk about to get off the bat right away is, this guide is not for people whose card levels are below tournament cap. If your cards are not at tournament cap, I do not recommend playing grand challenges. It is very impressive for you to be 5+ wins in with like a level 6 hog rider, yes, but almost always you will not. No, I would say never. You will probably never get like 12 wins, and it's not really going to be good for you. Just focus on getting your cards to tournament cap, and then the game really starts. So let's go into the actual meat of this. Oh, actually, before this, just to show you guys how much like I've played, I am approaching 250k cards. Well, my goal is to hit 300k, because then most likely by then my rares will be maxed and I'll be able to play on max ladder. That's my goal. About 60k more cards, but I've reached 240k cards won, which is a sizable amount. So what I'm saying here has some credibility to it. I've played, all I've been doing have been grand challenges. Ladder has been a side amusement for me, sort of. I don't really find ladder very fun, but so yeah. Uh, the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to decks is that there are a few points I want to talk to brush on. Is that deck building is not all of it. Like, if people ask me things like, what are the best decks for GC? What are the best decks for Grand Challenges nowadays? Well, there is no best deck, but there are decks that are tailored to Grand Challenge, that are tailored to friendly battle play. And the reasons for this is because they're built correctly, and we're gonna go into like what building correctly kind of looks like. But to list out the things that I think decks should be able to do is that, one, decks should be adaptable. Decks should have ways to outplay. Um, and you should also have as many responses as possible within the deck slots. So in the deck slot, you only have like uh 8 card slots. These 8 card slots, there's no such thing as a deck that can counter everything. Not anymore. Like this deck doesn't exist anymore because there's too many variants in the meta right now. So your goal with these decks is that you want this deck to be, as we said, adaptable. You want it to have as many responses as possible to the decks that are going to be seen. We can break this down by understanding the decks that are coming toward us, using cards that have very good responses within them. Cards like Ice Spear, cards like Miner, cards like these cards that are not that easy to that have like many different roles within them they that can make value for you, right? Like you're not going to be seeing cards like Sparky that have one job and do that one job and only that one job. You're not going to be seeing cards like let's see, for instance, uh Wizard, not really. Clone, Rage, you're not going to be seeing these cards that have one job and can't do anything else, because that would limit you. That would limit you to having good matchups within this sort of like small realm, and not the vast majority of players. Because you're not only playing against one type of person, you're playing against, theoretically, you're playing against 12 different people. Some people might get one person more than once, but that's like pretty rare. Your deck should be going for inherently less risk. Like, you don't want risk in your decks. What I mean by risk is that what people don't understand is that, yes, you can build a deck that has like Tornado, right? You can build a deck that has Tornado. Sure, Tornado is fine within some certain matchups and does very great within these matchups. But then I almost guarantee you that you're gonna face decks that Tornado does almost nothing against, and that there's risk in that. If we take in contrast a card like Zap, I can almost guarantee you that Zap will be used in the same way, in the same fashion, every single game. So if we think about that, there's less inherent risk to Zap than Tornado. If we let's say um hmm uh I want to highlight a deck that some people have been playing. I don't know. RG, the guard. Um okay. I think I'm just gonna take this response. So let's just go back to that Tornado example, because I think this Tornado example is probably the best here. Tornado is great against cards like Balloon. It's great against cards like Hog Rider. Great against cards like Miner sometimes, right? Because it can pull it to the King Tower, it can pull the Balloon to the middle, so you can deal with it. So we would say that this deck has a favorable matchup to this, and this, right? But would lose almost always to cards like this and this, where Tornado doesn't have an effect there. You want to limit that as much as possible, and in general with your decks, you want to be going for decks that like have that are like very middle in the road. You want to be going for decks that don't really have a favorable matchup either way. When you have decks that don't have a favorable matchup, so let's say like up here is like favorable, down here is like not favorable, right? You want a deck somewhere within here, so that you, like, through your skill, through your ability to interact, like alter the playing field, you manufacture your own advantages, right? You don't really, like, some decks will have advantages like that are inherent, right? But you want decks that don't have inherent advantages, but also, then this is the important part, that doesn't have inherent disadvantages. Uh, as much as possible. Obviously, there's no deck like that, and we just went over that. But you want to limit that as much as possible. So decks that kind of highlight this are, uh, like, I myself am a Miner player, right? In Grand Challenge, Miner is actually a very strong archetype, because miners can, one, bypass buildings, two, they are very strong in chip game, which is good for Grand Challenges because they take 6 minutes to win. Like, it's very hard to draw against a miner because you have to guess it almost every single time. Minor has many bad matchups, but also has many good matchups. It's very much in the middle of the road, and uh, depending on your skill, is swung into a good archetype or a bad archetype, right? If I were to play something like RG in Grand Challenge, some people would say that it's like balanced. Some people would say that it's weaker. Some people would say it's stronger. But I would say that the RG has pretty strong matchups and some really like bad matchups, like or even taking for example things like I don't know, maybe Golem. Golem is pretty hard to win with in Grand Challenge because it has some pretty bad matchups, but it has very good matchups too. And there's not really like a middle of the road here. If you're playing Golem and you face or you match a mirror spell cycle deck like the mirror furnace deck, right? Mirror cycle, Golem has a like very tough matchup there. It's almost impossible to win it. Or if Golem, but if Golem matches up against like a Hog Rider that doesn't play to their pump advantage or anything like that, Golem can absolutely stomp on Hog Rider, right? But you don't want to leave yourself open to having to let like the system match you up against really good matches. Instead, you want to be playing decks that can where you can influence it as much as possible. You can influence the match as much as possible. I mean, so now that we like sort of talked about the decks here, like what kind of decks you should be seeing, I want to talk about the mindset when it comes to approaching grand challenges. One thing that I feel like a lot of people don't really take for granted is that one, like grand challenges, you don't have to play through the entire grand challenge in one sitting. You don't have to do that. Grand challenges you can play it at almost at any time. They aren't like a tournament realm where you only have an hour to win. You can do this over days. Like it depends on the type of person that you are. But I would recommend just taking a break after each game, reviewing the loss, doing this and this until you get really comfortable, and then go back into a game. You have three chances, and going into every single game tilted, let's say, really does throw off your game, and you can just lose a challenge right there on the spot. So I mean I would recommend taking some breaks. Uh, so in challenge mode 2, because the games go up to 6 minutes, right? Like you have 3 minutes of regular time and then you have 3 minutes of overtime. Knowing that at 6 minutes, the thing about your towers is that tower health is very important. It's very important. Um, Knowing that, like, try and if you're really trading tower health for anything, you should be getting something else out of it. If you're trading tower health for free, you're going to probably lose. This is why you see a lot of furnaces in challenge. People, for some reason, give up damage on their towers to furnaces like it's nothing because they think that they have all the time in the world when you really don't. Uh, Tower health goes by like nothing and can take a lot of people off guard. So I would say one, take your tower health very seriously. Two, play. I want you guys to start playing in a play to not lose. I believe that when 15Ks came out, I don't know why I remember this, but when people asked Woody, Woody the Mortar Mauler from Reddit Alpha, asked him like, oh, how do you get to the top of these like ladder tournament these in-game Supercell 15K tournaments so highly? Well, he said, well, I'm playing to not lose. When you play to not lose, you're playing very defensively. You're playing for your tower health. You're playing in a way where you're playing patiently to watch out your opponent, and this all ties in together in a way where you can give yourself a lot of room to outplay your opponent, and like what's that? Watch for your opponent misplays and outplay them. Like this, I always recommend bettering your defense over your offense. If you can always defend, then you will never lose, right? It's an old argument like, uh, shit. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about the cursing, but I'm so bad with like euphemisms. An ultimate offense is better than like an ultimate defense is better than ultimate offense. I forgot something like that. I prefer having an ultimate defense. over this. So another thing is I want you guys to be consistent with your decks too. Consistency. What I mean by that is I recommend playing just 1 to 2 decks. 1 to 2 decks that you know inside and out. Uh, when you're playing in a grand challenge, the last thing that you want to do is play against yourself. You What I mean by that is if you're constantly switching decks because you're getting frustrated that you think that the system is countering you or something weird like that. Well, first of all, it's not. But you're going to keep resetting yourself over and over and over again. And eventually, you're just going to be thinking about what to do with this deck. When instead, you should just be thinking about your opponent. You should be thinking about all the other important parts of the game, like card counting, cycling, what to do in this and such and such situation. By knowing your deck, by being consistent with your deck, you can skip all of that and just focus on your opponent and focus on how to win instead of thinking about how to play this OP Lava Loon deck now when you haven't even played Lava Loon at all. So I guess that is like when it comes to mindsets and grand challenges. These are the things I like to highlight. Focus on your tower health, play to not lose. It helps you focus on your opponent, be patient with your plays, look for outplay potential. Because like grand challenges are ultimately down to your ability to adapt, your skill, uh, so there should be should there so there shouldn't be like really any excuses as to why you lose. If you do lose, review your replays, definitely go over it and really analyze it yourself. And I'm sure that you're gonna start winning grand challenges eventually if you aren't already. The last thing I want to talk about is just prevalent strategy. This is pretty short. I like to not put too much emphasis here because prevalent strategies do change with time. Before in grand challenges, everybody used to just play Goizen, and then it changed over, right? Like meta changes, card changes, but in general, like prevalent deck strategies nowadays that I'm sure will go out of style eventually. But I just want to touch on this. Like you're going to be seeing things like Miner, Hog Rider, all variants of Graveyard. You're going to be seeing Counterattack Graveyard. You're going to be seeing Lava Hound Graveyard, Golem Graveyard, Giant Graveyard, like everything Graveyard because Graveyard is a very strong card. You're going to see Lava Hound from time to time. You will see X-Bow is kind of resurging. But the thing that you kind of notice about this is that these are all very strong archetypes that can win almost at any time. Uh, Grand challenges are not like ladder. Grand challenges are not like tourney realm. Um, they have their own limitations, and you want to be playing to those limitations and trying to maximize it with your own skill in order to get that 12 win as many times as possible. Like don't feel bad if you can't hit 12 wins. It's only a very small pool of players can do that consistently, and even then, it might even be hard for them because things keep changing all the time. Let's see. Yeah, so I hope this helps you when you approach grand challenges. Grand challenges are definitely the best way to max out your account. Uh, they don't really bring too much like. Well, I was gonna say don't bring too much glory to the game. Like no one really watches your grand challenges, anything like that. Like in the past, people would watch your 15Ks all the time. But this is a great way to just improve by yourself. Use these grand challenges as a way to play on a even playing ground. They do cost $1 to essentially get in, but um, if you can make it past like this point, like maybe 6 wins, you're getting a positive return on your investment. So I would say try to aim for this and like higher. If you apply all of this and really take it to heart, I'm sure that you're going to start seeing your grand challenges pan out. Okay, so thank you for watching, guys. If you have any more questions, put it in the comments below, and I'll be sure to look at it. Subscribe, like, comment, all of that jazz, and I will see you for next video. Thank you for watching.